Fine, Marlene. How are you?
Trustees, Mr. Carroll, thank you for the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2023 Charter First rating for Westlake Academy. This rating is based on the analysis of audited financial data from fiscal year 2022. There's a year gap or a year lag. The Charter First management report included in the board packet is lengthy and contains a lot of information. However, the Texas Education Agency requires a summarized version of the information to be presented to the Board of Trustees. So the school's first rating is a financial accountability rating system developed for Texas independent school districts by the Texas Education Agency in response to Senate Bill 875 of the 76th legislature in 1999. This bill amended the Education Code to require the Commissioner of Education, in consultation with the State Comptroller's Office, to develop a school district financial accountability rating system by the following year. In 2009, charter schools were added to that, and it's now referred to as Charter First. So the rating system has 4 different goals. One is to achieve quality financial performance in the management of resources provided to Westlake Academy. The second is to provide an additional level of financial transparency to school finance and to enable the Texas Education Agency as well as our administrators at Westlake Academy to provide financial oversight and look at opportunities for continuous improvement. And the final is to develop processes for anticipating and projecting future solvency. TEA's financial analysis begins on page 428 of the agenda packet. So TEA uses indicators to analyze the financial condition of all school districts. The source of all information comes from the Academy's annual financial report and also data from the Public Education Information Management Systems, or it's also well known as PIMS. So indicators 1 through 5 are referred to as critical indicators. If a district fails any one of these indicators, the rating will be an automatic F for substandard achievement, regardless of the total amount of points that are earned from other areas. So just to briefly touch on those indicators, the first one was the financial annual report submitted through TEA's website by the deadline. Did the Academy receive an unmodified opinion through the annual financial report? The Academy, number 3, does not really apply because the Academy has no bonded indebtedness. All debt is maintained by the municipality, and all leases were paid timely. Were all payments to the Texas Retirement System, TWC, and the IRS and other governmental entities made on time? Was the total of net position, which was in the audit, a negative $3,025,239? But this net position includes the other post-employment benefits and the net pension liability. So with these 2 expenses excluded, the net position was $592,310. Westlake Academy passed all of these indicators. Indicators 4, 5, 6, 17, and 18 are referred to as ceiling indicators. If a district fails a ceiling indicator, the maximum points will be and rating will vary, as shown on page 432 of the agenda packet, ranging from meet standard achievement up to superior achievement, depending on the indicator. So we've already covered 4 and 5. Indicator 6 reviews the change in net assets over a 3-year period, which should be less than 25%. However, with this indicator, we received a 0 out of 10 points. The average change in total net asset over 3 years showed a negative 91.7% of change. However, when we reviewed the data that TEA used, 2 of those years of comparison were incorrect. So the total change in net assets should have been a 1.94% change.
So did they change the scoring?
Not on this year. It's just as it is at that point.
Okay.
And then I did contact them, and they said that they would be reviewing and adjusting the those indicators or those amounts.
Okay.
Because it's a rolling 3 years.
But you said there was a net increase
Yes.
in the end, yeah.
Yes. So because of that, due to receiving 0 points for that indicator, we were given a rating of 89, which is above standard achievement. And the indicator 17, this indicator measures the variance between the annual audit and the electronic submission of the report through the mid-year PEMS, and there was no variance reported. And the last one, the auditors found no material weaknesses in internal controls for fiscal year 22 as presented to the board in January of 2023. The remaining other indicators and their related calculations are shown in detail beginning on page 425 of the agenda packet. All maximum points were received for these other indicators. And now I want to just touch on the results of the indicators and what the impact is on the future of Westlake Academy. If a school district fails or does not meet these indicators consistently for any 3 of 5 preceding years, the Commissioner of Education may not renew a charter or shall allow a charter to expire, or may revoke the charter and or the accreditation status. This will occur for 2 main reasons. The first is the charter has the lowest educational performance rating for any of the 3 of the 5 preceding years, or has a first rating indicating financial performance is lower than satisfactory for any of the 3 preceding years. If a charter school falls in this category, TEA will take extreme measures to make sure that intervention is done over the course of 2 years before they decide on removing a charter or not renewing a charter. So as you can see from this graph, Westlake Academy has consistently exceeded TEA's required passing scores. If you'll notice, in fiscal years prior to 2016, the indicators were changed once every 1 to 2 years to improve the data, the way the data was analyzed at that time. But this created many fluctuations in the ratings. It wasn't until the commissioner rules concerning the first rating were reviewed and finalized, including the critical and the ceiling indicators, and that became a more smoother analysis. So the last segment of this presentation is the presentation of the required reporting specific disclosures related to the head of school, executive officers, and the Board of Trustees. Details of these disclosures begin on 433 of your agenda packet. A public notice in the commercial record was placed notifying the community and its stakeholders of the first rating presentation, and this presentation was also put on the Academy's website under the Financial Transparency tab. Disclosure 1 is the interim head of school's current employment contract. And the interim head of school assumes the responsibilities per her contract, which was approved by the Board of Trustees. All salary, benefits, and other forms of compensation are paid exclusively by Westlake Academy through the general fund budget. All information is also available on the transparency page, financial transparency page on the Academy's website. Disclosure 2 provides information on reimbursements paid to the previous head of school and the current head of school. Reimbursements totaling $34,651 were paid to or on behalf of Dr. Wilson during his employment and were related to housing reimbursements, professional development, and travel. Reimbursements totaling $507 were paid to Carolyn Anderson and were related to professional development. A detailed list of any of these expenditures is available upon request. For all other disclosures, no funds were received by the prior head of school, the interim head of school, or members of the Board of Trustees related to outside compensation, gifts received, or business transactions with Westlake Academy. This concludes the presentation of the Charter First rating for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions at all?
Any questions?
Thanks,
Thank you.
Marlene.
Thank you very much.
Always.
All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Move on. We're supposed to do a public hearing, right, Amy? Open up the public hearing, right? Right. That was first part. Okay. Close the public hearing now? All right, we'll close it. Let's go on to I-1, Resolution 2405, concerning approving Resolution 2405, accepting the 2022 audit report and take appropriate action.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have our auditor on the Zoom here, Louis Breedlove. He is with Brooks Watson to present the findings of the fiscal year 22 audit. Additionally, I have hard copies for everyone on the dais, and we will make sure that this is electronically available on our website by the end of the week. With that, I will turn it over to Louis.
Good evening, Council. I appreciate you guys allowing me to present remotely. I was traveling and unable to make it in person, so I do apologize. My name is Louis Breedlove. I had the pleasure of working with the town during the 2022 fiscal year audit. And I do want to start out by just noting that this is 2022's fiscal year audit presentation, far after the typical time frame that you would receive such information. It was completed a couple months ago. And I know we've had a few canceled council meetings, so we're just now able to get it in front of you. But the information has been fully reviewed and completed and presented that we have for you this evening. As Casey mentioned, we do have the presented our bound copies of the audit report as well. And so I'm going to use this PowerPoint presentation to go over the results of the audit. First, the audit was conducted in consistency with all generally accepted auditing standards. Throughout the audit, there are various phases that we complete. The first phase being the assessment phase, so we would go through each department and evaluate the controls in place, look for any potential areas of weakness or what the policies are in place there as well. And as we sit down with the folks in each department, anywhere where money comes in or money goes out, we're evaluating what kind of controls are in place. And then we're also sample testing each of these areas as well to ensure that what we see in practice is consistent with the policies, procedures, and the walkthrough that we complete with that department. Once we do that, if we find anything that there may be potential recommendations or improvements that they could consider, we would provide that to management for consideration. And then we move into the risk-based approach. So that's going to be evaluating every area of the financial statements. So each aspect of the financial statements has a different type of risk. So it can vary year to year. So we evaluate it on an annual basis. And it drives the type of procedures we need to perform, as well as the level of detail to which we need to perform it to ensure that we feel that the financials are materially accurate and presented properly. Beyond that's the compliance testing. So that's going to be things such as your Public Fund Investment Act, grants, any bid requirements, anywhere that the council has approved something that may require a compliance component. We would evaluate that as well to ensure that we see that the town is following that compliance. After that is the actual fieldwork component of the audit, where we perform the testing over the numbers provided to us. We perform cutoff testing procedures. We confirm with third party wherever possible, banks and many of the other parties, such as your property tax assessor, collector. And as we perform those procedures, we're also testing the revenue and expenditures to ensure that those are materially accurate as they are presented. After that, it goes through multiple layers of review to ensure that no additional procedures are necessary and all proper procedures are performed and properly reported. Next, going over the components of the annual report, there is the introductory section, followed by the financial section. That's going to include the auditor's opinion letter, the management's discussion and analysis, and that's going to contain some year-to-year activity comparison, as well as some high-level insight as it relates to budget and other major changes throughout the year, as well as capital activity. Financial statements, it's going to include your government-wide as well as your fund-level statements. Behind that's your notes of the financial statements, which is going to give you a lot of the detail that is encompassing in those numbers. So a lot of the breakdown on capital, debt, and other large numbers, as well as what those consist of in description format as well. As well as the supplementary information, that's going to be your statistical section as well after that. As it relates to the auditor's opinion, the town did receive an unmodified opinion, and that's the highest level of assurance that we as auditors are able to provide. It's often referred to as a clean opinion. Next, just go over a few comparison year over year for each fund. Overall, we did see some a significant increase in the general fund. That's primarily due to sales tax coming in higher than anticipated, as well as permits coming in higher than anticipated, and the town having a very conservative budget for the year, which we'll take a look at the budget to actual in the next slide. Debt service, relatively minor change, but it did go slightly deficit in 2022. Capital projects, we saw a lot of changes there. Primarily, the biggest swing was related to transfers in, as well as grants. Your EDC had sales tax activity, not a lot of expenditure activity, so just overall just an increase from the previous year. Westlake Academy, we saw a decrease of $443,000 from the previous year in the fund balance. The expansion capital project for Westlake Academy, saw an increase there, primarily due to transfers in. And then your non-major governmental funds consist of all the other funds that do not meet the requirement to be presented as a major fund. Each fund are special use, special revenue purposes, and are consistent with expectations there. All right, next is your budget to actual information at the high level. Detail for this is on page 102 of the report. But at a high level, revenues did come in over expectations by $3.6 million. As I mentioned previously, that was sales tax and permit revenue primarily driving that. Expenditures were under budget by just over $1 million. That was wide sweeping from every department. Every line item that I looked at came in under budget, and so just overall impact of that resulted in a total of a little over $1 million in being under budget. And then your other sources and uses, that's going to be your transfers in and out, had a decrease to $92,000 variance. So overall, net positive budget variance of $4.5 million. So very healthy budget for that year. As it relates to your unrestricted budgetary fund balance, GFOA does recommend that municipalities maintain at least 2 months of regular general fund expenditures. Also, the town has a policy that unassigned fund balance in the general fund would be equal to 180 days or 49%. For 2022, it was sitting at 194%. So far exceeding the minimum requirements as well as exceeding the requirements of the town policy. Next, related to financial highlights for your proprietary fund, we like to look at these and present these a little differently because they do operate differently from the rest of your funds. They operate more like a business, and so we do assess them and present them accordingly. So first we look to see, is it self-sustaining? In this case, the utility fund had an operating income of just over $2 million, positive cash flow, and positive change in net position. So fund looks very healthy. Cemetery fund operates similarly and also looked very good. Next, communication letters. So there's 2 other letters that come with their audit report. One is a communication with those charged with governance. So that's going to go over various language that's a lot of it's boilerplate standard language that we're required to communicate to council and management. A few things I do like to point out from that letter is 1, the audit was conducted in compliance with all ethics requirements regarding independence. 2, we had no difficulty encountered when working with management. And 3, the audit adjustments that were identified have been corrected by management. The second letter is a communication regarding internal controls. This would be where if any recommendations that were identified were communicated. So there were a few recommendations identified and have been communicated to finance and management, and have all been addressed at this point. And with that, I'll open up to any questions you might have.
Yeah, I know you mentioned this at the beginning, but why did it actually take so long to produce the final audit?
Yes, sir. So there were a few factors. So 1, just in general, we had a slow start to the beginning of the audit due to there was a lot of changes going on within the town, and so first we completed the Academy's audit, which that was made priority to meet the requirement for TEA. So the town's audit did not get to start until the Academy's audit was completed, and so there were still things being worked on to get prepared for the audit. At that time, progress was made, but as you know, there were some changes in personnel, and we're very happy to work with Casey we had the privilege of working with a couple other finance directors prior to her. And so with that came with some, unforeseen delays. But she did help us. Casey, when she came in, she was able to get us wrapped up on the items needed for the town portion. There's also the component units that go within the town's report. So that's going to include not just the planning component units, such as the academy, but also some discretely presented component units that must be included in the report to be appropriately reflecting the full composition of the town's report. So unfortunately, we were unable to leave that portion out. So that portion also, it was changing auditors from them. They had a different auditor than you did prior to us coming on. And so there were some additional unforeseen delays with that, as well as they had some changes on on the use of different third-party accounting sources. So that there was multiple factors that caused some delays there. Thankfully, your discretely presented component unit their team is very responsive and quick to give us everything we possibly could need. Unfortunately, it was not entirely in their control. But we were able to present it and get it completed in December. But yes, as you stated it, and I stated earlier, it's way beyond the timeframe that is expected and typical. We don't anticipate that happening again. So seems like you guys have a great team. I think you guys made a great hire with Casey, and they've made a lot of changes, and so we're excited to see what happens with the town going forward.
Have you started working on the 2023 fiscal year audit?
Yes, sir. We've had so currently we split it up this year to help provide some additional efficiency. So we have a separate crew audit team working on the academy's portion, which that is also ongoing right now, as well as the town. And we were out there the past couple of weeks, and they've been providing a lot of information as we speak. I saw an email come in right before this meeting. So it's in the process, and they're diligently working to get us what is needed for the 2023 audit.
So what's your best expectation on timing for this one?
Excuse me. I'm not sure, because we are. I don't want to give you a date, because I don't know. It will not be, based on what I'm seeing right now, it will not be before the end of March, just due to the component unit aspect. We're getting rolling on that as well. I do think we should be sufficiently completed with the town's portion of the audit by that time. But it may not be finalized for presentation at that date yet, unfortunately.
Can
you help
would
me
you
understand?
agree? Sorry, Kim, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Can you help me understand, just in a perfect world, this is the 21-22 audit, and we have
Yes.
22-23 and 23-24. In a perfect world, what is the timing of these audits? We got this one behind us. 22-23 is, I assume, the next audit. When should that
Yes.
have been done?
So we would expect that to be completed ideally before the end of March. So
Okay.
that is always the goal, to 180 days after year end.
Okay.
Excuse me. So that is when we would expect to have it available to be able to present.
What's industry standard?
I'm sorry?
Is industry standard 180 days?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. And then-
for municipalities, that's the standard.
Second question, is this one of your smaller budgets that you do?
It's kind of in the middle.
Okay.
And if I may elaborate just kind of on his answer just then, the dollar amount might be in the middle, but we are a unique entity in that we are
Yes.
literally the only municipality within the whole state that owns and operates a charter school. Plus, we have the additional complication of having housing authorities, which is an issue with any audit.
Well, Casey, I thought the opinion was great. Can't get any better, but we do need to get caught up.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
I have no other. I read the whole thing before the prior meeting. I know there was some emphasis of matter issues raised. There's some other control issues raised. I know you've addressed those. I saw them, the written responses you made. So, I mean, it looks like we've had some issues in the past. It looks like you are still cleaning a lot of that up. So hopefully we'll get more real-time feedback with this 23 audit so we can take a look at that and see some of those improvements coming through. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Louis.
all.
Sorry, we have to approve the resolution. Can I get first to approve Resolution 2405, accepting the audit?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed? No opposed? Motion carries. All right, considering approving Westlake Resolution 2405, Westlake Resolution 24, amending the Westlake Academy graduation policy, take appropriate action. Dr. Owen, on down.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm here to present on our proposed amendments to the Westlake graduation policy. There we go. So in your agenda packets on pages 668 to 672, there is the full revisions that we are proposing for our graduation policy, with the new parts highlighted in yellow and the bits that we're moving struck out. I think what I'm going to do to be as efficient as possible is, rather than going through it line by line, I'm just going to give you an overview of the two main reasons for this change and explain some of the rationale behind it. And I'll be happy to answer any of the questions that you have. So the first rationale for the revision of our graduation policy was to meet Texas Education Code 28.0253, which requires the Academy to provide an early graduation opportunity for students who meet the criteria identified in the statute. And so this education code was amended by the Senate Bill 1888, which was passed last year. Our current graduation policy does not allow for early graduation. So that was the first reason why we had to have this change. And there are specific parts of this education code that we have to follow, which I'll explain in a moment. And so needing to change our graduation policy to allow for early graduation and to allow students to graduate early based on certain criteria, this then meant that we also took the opportunity to review our current graduation policy as it stood, and then based on the logic of early graduation, and then based on some advice from Region 11, from the charter specialist, and my own conversations with our legal counsel, Janet Bubert, we changed the requirements or the distribution of the credits in our distinguished level of achievement plan. So those are the two main changes. So in terms of the first change, which is allowing early graduation, what the Texas Education Code has introduced is what's called the Texas First program, or the Texas First diploma. So this means that students have the opportunity to graduate 1 year early or 1 semester early if they meet various criteria. And if they do so, and they are accepted into Texas universities, they can receive a scholarship for the first year. So the rationale behind this legislation was to make education more efficient in the state of Texas, and also to incentivize the top students to also go to university in Texas. So I won't go through the various criteria line by line, but what you have here is what the Texas Education Code is asking students to achieve if they want to graduate early. And because this is law, Westlake Academy has to honor this. So the changes that you see in your agenda packet is following that law to the letter. So if students were to fulfill these requirements and they requested to graduate early, then we would have to honor that. So At this stage, is there any
James,
questions?
Yeah, so, I mean, I understand what you're just following what the state law is saying, but if students push to take subjects earlier than what's being set up by the school, do you have to accommodate, or it's only if they can happen to get through enough credits?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't have to change what we offer.
Okay.
We do not. It's up to the student to make sure they fulfill that criteria. So to give you one example, the last bullet point, a demonstration of mastery in each subject area of English, language, arts, mathematics, science, social studies, and a language other than English. The criteria for the demonstration of mastery in a foreign language would be, for example, passing an AP exam, taking a CLEP test, which is run by the College Board. We don't have to provide that. The student has to make sure that they do it in time if they want to graduate early.
James, did we have an early graduate this year?
If this passes, then yes, for an exceptional circumstance, which I'm going to talk about.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. No. It's a good question. Are there any other questions about the Texas First Diploma at this stage?
Any other questions?
No, so.
Okay. So, being that we have to now introduce early graduation, I just want to read the wording that I'm putting into the graduation policy. So, Westlake Academy does not allow early graduation unless, A, the student has satisfied all the requirements to graduate on the Texas First program, or B, the student has met the required credits of the foundation high school program, and the head of school or the designee has determined it is in the best interest of the student to graduate early due to exceptional circumstances. So I feel it's prudent to put that extra language in just in case we have situations where we feel that it is in the best interest of a student to graduate early.
Can we do that? That's not too restrictive, taking state language and then adding subjectivity?
For Texas First program. That second part would be someone who has not yet met the Texas First program, but has met the foundational program requirements and meets exceptional circumstances.
Okay. But we're saying we have to hit all three of these for Westlake to graduate them early. So it's the state requirements plus the foundation.
No, that's not what you're saying. Texas First criteria is A.
Right.
So under A, you would be able to graduate early. Second pathway, separate from Texas First.
But this is saying that we won't allow for it unless all three of these occur.
It's A or B.
It's A or B.
Oh, I see. I just saw the and part at the end. Okay.
Because B has two parts.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. But there's still subjectivity to it, so the head of school would still have to approve it.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
The second part of the graduation policy that we propose changing is the distinguished level of achievement. So in the current policy that's in your agenda packet, for the distinguished level achievement, we had identified the 26 credits, but we had identified a different way to what is written out there to getting to those 26 credits. Firstly, they were stated as being IB subjects, and then in terms of the balance between the different subject areas, they were higher than what the state required. So, for example, social studies, we had asked for 5 credits, math we'd asked for 5 credits, and electives was much lower. So when we were thinking this through, we took advice from legal counsel, and we spoke to Region 11 as well, and what was advised is our graduation policy, in terms of the distinguished level achievement, should match the Texas Education's authority definition of distinguished level of achievement. They should be one and the same. So I think in the past, with the previous graduation policy that has specified more credits in individual areas and they had to be IB courses, I believe that was based on the rationale that we want all of our students to be diploma program candidates, and the graduation policy was kind of being used as a tool to try and enforce that. I think it makes much more sense to make a cleaner distinction, to have a graduation policy that matches the state requirements, and then use our course catalog and our academic planning guide to reinforce our philosophy that we want all of our students to be diploma program candidates. So moving forward, that's the distinction that we want to make. But even though we're changing our distinguished level achievement to match the state, and it doesn't mention the IB, the way we offer our courses, which is exclusively for diploma program candidates, we're ensuring that all of our students are DP candidates. And that really covers the two main changes. There's smaller changes here and there, but that's really in the wording, changing from executive director to head of school. At this stage, are there any more questions?
Any questions? Questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We have to approve this, so can I get a first?
So moved.
Get a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No opposed. Motion carries. All right, I3, Westlake Resolution 24-6, considering approving Westlake Resolution 24-6, amending the Westlake Academy admission policy and take appropriate action.
So you all have some proposed revisions to the Westlake Academy admissions policy, and this was motivated by a desire to see what the policy would look like if it was revised so that once a student has enrolled, whether they enroll as a primary boundary student or a secondary boundary student, that once they have enrolled properly, that they could continue their enrollment from year to year after that without having to meet any other future conditions. And that would apply to all groups of students with the exception under the current proposal. That would apply to all students except those students who are enrolled or receive priority enrollment because they are the child of a Westlake Academy employee or town council employee. Those would still have that additional criteria that continue their enrollment. The parent would have to continue to be employed. And so that is the primary change to this. We tried to use the opportunity to also clean up some other language, but that's the primary change in the proposed policy.
Questions?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't follow. What was the previous policy?
So the previous policy for individuals who initially enrolled as a Westlake resident and had that priority consideration,
right,
there were certain stipulations on the ability to continue that enrollment.
So if the kid moved out of town, if they moved out of town, they would have to leave the school.
Depending upon how long they had actually lived in Westlake, there was a requirement.
And so then we would go out and get a lottery kid and try to reintegrate that person into the IB program. We've already invested in that. They're essentially become a lottery kid.
Right.
So why are we grabbing the new person that's already...
And it also impacted those students who initially obtained admission under the opportunity to establish residency if a grandparent is providing a substantial amount of after-school care. There was an obligation for that to continue to be shown.
Is that still in the policy?
That's still in the current policy. But
I didn't see it in that section, though, that you had circulated.
Because that's part of what would change. If they come initially under that provision, they would be allowed to continue enrollment even if the grandparent was no longer providing.
Okay.
The only condition would be, and this is allowed under the federal statute, you are allowed to continue enrollment in subsequent years as long as you meet the initial criteria at the time that you're enrolled. The only continuing criteria that has to remain is that they continue to reside in either a primary or a secondary boundary.
Okay.
So you still can't reside outside of the boundaries total, but now we're looking at cumulative boundaries rather than primary versus secondary.
And our boundaries are still 33 ISDs.
That is correct.
We go from basically northeast past McKinney all the way down to southwest.
But there's no boundary stipulation for an employee of the town, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But this is clarifying that if they are no longer employed, the student would see out the year but no longer be eligible to stay.
After that year, that is
Okay.
correct.
Any other questions? No? No. All right. Thank you, Janet. Can I get a first?
Yeah, I'll
So
make a
moved.
motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No opposed? Motion carries. All right. We have take a 5-minute break here real quick, and we'll decide what to do next here, all right?